So, hi guys, welcome back on the channel. Today I have with me my friend Mike Peters. We're going to talk about his rule set. Here's the Ruckus. It's a skirmish rule set for the medieval, extended medieval era. Hi, Peter. Thank you for joining me.
Hi Nick, thanks for inviting me along.
You were very heavily involved in never mind the billhooks, and many times you talk about the rules and you explain to me the
Yes.
rules. How Ruckus came up? I mean, how you decided to start the rule set?
Okay, so it occurred to me that the rule system that we had for billhooks would work just as well for individual figures as it would for units. So I tried it. I thought maybe there's the beginnings of a skirmish game here. So I put some figures out on the table and I played it just using the billhooks rules, and it worked all right, and that was the first time I decided to use this. But what it needed was a better melee system rather than just rolling one dice each. So that was the nub of it, really. Once I worked out a system for doing the melee, it kind of just grew from that, really. And now it looks nothing like Billhooks. It's a completely different game. You wouldn't recognise it as being Billhooks now, I don't think. Yeah, and it's been a progression over about 2 years, I suppose, since I first thought the idea.
Um, we're going to talk about the rules, about the mechanics, because from chats we had and from me reading the rules, I'm going to review them, but wanted to have a chat with you first. Um,
Hmm.
it has something different than other rules. It looks like a role play game. Characters play a very important role in the game. And depending on the character you have and his characteristics and his background, you control your units and let's say, your army
Hmm.
in a simple differently. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'd say so. I would say if it's, I wouldn't call it a role play game. I would say characters because, uh, rather than figures, because I think that's a bit cold calling them figures. I think you need to associate with your retinue, and kind of because they develop. If you play the campaign system, you can develop them. You can gain new skills, and for me, it's all about the narrative. It's about the story. So it's important that the players engage with the game, and so the idea of having characters, I think, makes people see them as people rather than the figures. But yeah, I would say it has some aspects of role play game about it. Characters develop, they have skills and traits and attributes, um, and it's definitely a narrative game which has that common RPG. You're telling a story really, and the basis of it is to have fun. That's the underlying principle behind my game, is that it should be fun.
Yeah, for sure. Yes, the characters play important role, as you said, and we're going to talk about it. And very important is that you have a lot of uh, a- additions to the rules, correct? You have different
Yes,
eras, you have different characters,
yes,
and obviously you have something very important. You're developing campaign rules.
yes. So the basic game, the game that you get with Wargames Illustrated, is set in the Wars of the Roses, and you have one retinue described there. And as such, it's quite a simple game. But the idea is that we're going to produce a much bigger game. So this is like a 30-page pamphlet, really. And the idea is we'll have a 200-page book sometime next year. And so to extend it, we've done supplements, what I call supplements, really. So new retinues. So there's 100 Years' War. We've got the English and the French and the Free Companies for the 100 Years' War. There are the Irish, so we've got the Kerns and the Gallaglasses, and the Anglo-Irish with the Pell. So there's another two retinues there. The Landsknechts and the Swiss, that's another supplement. Just working on the Reavers now, and I've done some for Robin Hood and the Sherwood Forest campaign. So as it stands, you have a retinue of 12 figures, and each of these different new supplements introduces a new retinue with new profiles, new characters, and new skills, and new cards. So the game grows and grows and grows with each piece, really, each time.
So how the game works, let's talk about the game a bit and
Yeah,
like the sequence and the mechanics, because obviously when we're introducing a game on the channel and we have the writer, it's a good people are looking forward to see how the mechanics work so they can make their own opinion if it works for them,
yeah,
if it doesn't. First of all, the size of the game, the skirmish game, but um, is there for someone that wants a little bit of bigger battle, a little bit more units, is it possible? Is it the size restricted? Can we
yeah,
have more minions? Is there an option there, or is it a possibility?
yeah, absolutely. The basic retinue is of 12 characters. You have two types of characters. You have heroes and you have retainers. And the heroes are more powerful. They have attributes, which mean that they have health and attack values and defense values. And the retainers have a similar aspect, but much less. So a hero is much stronger, more powerful than a retainer. And those three heroes, you have the captain who runs the retinue, and under him you have two squires who are slightly weaker with less skills, and then beneath them you have the retainers. And the retainers share one aspect in the fact they've only got one life. Once they're wounded, they're out of the game, whereas the heroes can continue for some while. They have wounds. And the retainers are split into two types normally, and that's the fighters and the shooters. And in the basic retinue, you have three billmen as fighters and six archers as shooters. Uh, the game has random activation. So for each of those heroes, there's a card. This is straight from Billhooks. There's a deck of cards, and each turn you draw from a deck of cards. And when your hero is drawn, you can activate him, and he can give instructions to the retainers that are under him and try to achieve objectives and to attack and kill the enemy. The game's fairly simple in the fact that it uses d6 for everything. It is measured in inches. Most of the characters, all the characters on foot, tend to move 6 inches, so there's not a lot to remember. And my idea behind it, the principle behind it, is that it should be easy to learn and easy to pick up, which I think it is. And the guiding principle is to make it fun rather than realistic or historically accurate, because I don't believe you can achieve either of those things in a game. And you have a play deck, and the play deck has the hero cards for activation and two bonus cards, which you can dice for. And if you win a bonus card, just like Billhooks, you get a chance to get an extra turn or to delay your opponent having a turn. Or if you're lucky, you get to play a diverse alarm, which is kind of like random events. And as the game's expanded, I've written more and more and more of these diverse alarms. So there are probably about 40 of them now. And you usually have about 13 when you play a game. So we've got specific ones for all those new supplements. So the Irish have their own, and the Beavers have their own, the Landsnecks. They all have their own diverse alarms that are associated with that retinue, which kind of colour and flavour the game and try and bring in that idea of historical flavour. So that if you're playing a particular retinue, the diverse alarms should affect the characteristics that you would associate with that retinue. So 100 Years War English, for example, have diverse alarms that improve their archery. And the 100 Years War French have diverse alarms that accelerate their cavalry in a charge or bring out the local peasants in their favour. It's a very capricious game system, and no one's safe. So it has an element of risk in everything. One of the aspects I'm quite proud of with the game, one of the mechanics, is the idea of movement and action gambits. So you can, if you like, increase your movement each turn by sprinting. But there's a risk. You roll the dice. If you roll a 1, you're not going to sprint. And furthermore, you then roll 2 dice. And if those dice are equal to or less than the current turn number, then your man has become exhausted and he misses his next turn and he has to recover. And things much worse than that. So it's the whole idea of the gambits work around the idea of mishaps and calamities. So a mishap when shooting might be that you picked a duff arrow and you have to change it for another one, and you miss your turn. Whereas a calamity might be that the bow snaps or you run out of arrows. And those gambits apply to other things too, such as climbing, crossing streams, or swinging on a rope. You can make up your own if you wish to. So you can
Yeah.
swing the ship. We've got many different ones at the moment, and things like heroic entry, where you can dive through a window into a building. Um, and that's one of the mechanics I'm very pleased with, because it works. It's very simple, it's elegant, and it's fun, and it seems to fit all circumstances. The other mechanic that I'm quite pleased with, which I think is unique to Ruckus, is the melee system. And that works by rolling. You have attack attributes. Each character has attack attributes. And so for a retainer, it's usually one. For a captain, it's usually three, although you can get skills that can change that. And for each attribute you have, you roll a d6. And you fight 3 rounds in melee. In the first round, you need to achieve a 4 to get a hit. So the captain would roll 3 dice. Any 4s that he gets, he hits. And then his opponent would roll to save to make sure you didn't take an injury. And if they fail that, of course, they take a wound. But it's a bit more complex than that. So you have the heroes all have a skill called skilled arms. And some of the retainers have it too, but mostly it's the heroes. And with that, they've got 3 elements to skilled arms. The first one is a skill called thrust. The second one is a skill called parry. And the third one is a skill called fend. And if you then roll your dice, and then you can choose to either thrust, which means you re-roll one of your dice, or you can fend, which means you choose to re-roll one of your opponent's dice. Or you can choose, before the combat starts, you can choose to fend, which means you roll an extra dice, but you don't get to do any re-rolls. In the second round, the combatants are weaker, so they only hit 5s. And in the third round, they lose their skilled at arms, so it becomes quite pot luck. If you get to the third round of melee, who's going to do what damage? And there are 52 skills in the basic game, which most of them affect melee and combat, and so they might improve your ability to hit, might improve your ability to defend, or it might be specific skills such as being able to roll away from a combat or continue a second combat if you win the first one. And as I say, there's 52 of them. There's quite a lot. And we use a deck of playing cards to decide. If you're playing a one-off game, you deal out so many cards to each hero, and that's the skills they have for that game.
Okay.
If you're playing a campaign game, then you develop the skills as you go. And you can earn the skills randomly, or you can use a mentor or a military order for training, so you can pick your skill. And retainers are different to heroes because they have a profile, they have a set profile. So every billman is exactly the same. Every retinue archer is exactly the same. And at the moment, there are about 60 different profiles for retainers. So we've got at least 3 different types of archer, and they have traits which define who they are. So a billman has skilled at arms, and he also has a support trait, so you can stand behind somebody else and add a dice to their combat. So the billmen are not as effective in combat, but they, in a campaign, can also earn skills. So if a billman, by complete surprise, manages to take out a hero in melee, then he immediately earns a skill, and you deal him one out of the deck, and from that moment on, he's got that skill. And so on. They also develop points over the campaign. Campaigns are quite simple. I think you'd enjoy it because it definitely got that continuity. It's not on a map or anything like that. It's a kind of ladder campaign, I suppose you'd call it, where you play a series of scenarios. You choose how many scenarios you're going to play at the beginning of the campaign and play them through. And your retinue earns prestige points for achieving objectives, for defeating enemies, and certain scenario-specific aims, and also certain specific campaign aims if you're playing a particular campaign. And those are all specific to individual retinues. So if you're playing the Reavers, for example, you earn prestige points for fight for defeating another clan that you're having a feud with.
And it's a very nice idea that in every battle, your men become more experienced. As you
Yeah,
told me, depending. Well, that's very nice because it has a
yeah,
continuity. Also, the random events and these mishaps, as you said, as a solo gamer, I'm a predominantly solo gamer. It's
yes,
very friendly because all these unexpected events that the game generates uh, give me an unpredictability that I don't have in other games when I'm playing on my own. So when I'm playing on my own, even these cards help me enjoy the game much more. And I think it's something I'm looking in games as a solo gamer that I don't have to make house rules and I have these cards or these random events that will change how the battle will flow suddenly and will give an unpredictability and some fun for the game. That's fantastic. So you have so your the rules work. So you start moving your units from your commander, your hero. One question: if you have more than one unit, you have more. There is a hero in every unit, or one hero controls all the
yeah.
units.
So the basic the army, if you like, that you start with is a retinue of 12, and your three heroes divide the retainers behind them, between them, into something that we call spears, which is named after the historically men-at-arms. A man-at-arms would present as a spear. He would have himself and his retainers, maybe 5 or 6 of them. So we're kind of reproducing that. So if you had the classic uh, Ruckus retinue, then you might give an archer a billman and 2 archers to your captain, and the same to your squire. So you divide them up evenly. Or you might, because your captain's got a higher command factor, you might give all 6 archers to your captain, and create some little kill teams with your squires to go off and combat and melee. So it's quite variable what you can do. It's quite a flexible command system. And I know you love your solo games, and I think Ruckus lends itself to it perfectly because of that capriciousness, that surprise factor. And it's a brutal game at times. Sometimes you've got to play quite hard against the game. And with you in mind, I've written a solo system for the game, which is going to be published in Wargames Illustrated probably in December.
Okay.
Okay, I've written it around one scenario really, where the retinue has to subdue a village. You have to go and claim taxes from a village of peasants, and so the peasants are in. It's called the peasants are revolting. So they're in groups and clumps, and they're controlled by the game, and you have to go and achieve your objectives. And I think it's quite hairy. I've yet to play test it. I've written it. I'm going to be play testing it over the next couple of weeks. So it might be refined a little more before it goes to press. But I think you'll enjoy it because it's
No, no,
certainly
for
got.
sure. Something I remember because we talked about the rules and I read them also that I was really impressed with. I liked it because it's something innovative. Was that during the first of all, you have melee reactions. I remember you told me during the. We'll talk about this. You can tell me, but I remember that you have support in your rules. For
Yes,
example, and it's very innovative. You don't have many skirmish games or games in general have support. I know that you told me before if your commander is fighting, his man
yes,
can come support him. That's a very interesting rule. Can you elaborate on this one?
yeah. Okay, so one of the other aspects, one of the mechanisms about this is that melees are fought to a conclusion. So they're only ever usually one man against one man. We don't have
Yeah.
multiple combats. So those 3 rounds are fought. So when you activate your characters, you that character does everything before the next character does anything. And if that character charges into melee against the opponent, that melee is fought out to conclusion before anything else happens. And so that means it's one-to-one combat. But some retainers, those armed with polearms and spears, have trait called support. And support means that when that first character moves into combat, supporting character can move behind him with his spear and add to the combat. So it does give a tactical flavour to it. It's definitely there are definitely tactics that work in Ruckus, and learning those is the answer, really, like all games, I suppose. And I think that's one thing we've managed to achieve with this. That it is fun, it is luck driven, really, but there are tactics to it too. You can play it well, or you can play it poorly. The dice will always be the kingpin. It's always going to be, if you don't roll well, you're not going to win. And so luck is a huge element of it. But there's a certain amount of skill too, really, and understanding those different skills, because there's so many of them, and the way they interact. We've had some really interesting games. We've had an awful lot of fun games, and we've certainly told an awful lot of stories. And I remember a game, a War in the Roses game, where a squire and his billman behind a wall held out against two spears attacking them one at a time, and then finally the captain of that retinue came over with his spear and got involved. And the only way they could take the squire out of him was to shoot him. But he was a proper hero, and I think I should never forget that game, because he took out these two opponent squires, and their billmen ran away, and he could have won the game single-handed. So there is this possibility of developing a true hero, and I think that's great. And the fact that it doesn't happen very often, it's quite a very rare occurrence. I've only seen it once, but the fact that it can happen, I think, makes the game exciting.
Yeah. What about shooting? Let's talk a little bit about shooting. If one unit has also archers inside
Yes.
included. Yes,
Yeah.
so it's quite interesting and innovative. Usually rules have infantry, have missile troops, have cavalry, but in
Yes.
your retinue you can have archers. So
Mixed.
um,
Yeah. It's all mixed.
mix. So
Mm.
basically you can decide to shoot with one of your miniatures, the other will do in the melee. It's very
Yes.
interesting, this combination, and it's
Yes.
very realistic. It's very realistic also, because nobody was waiting. The longbowmen were not waiting for the men at arms to fight, and you know what I'm saying. It's very realistic that you have 12 man, three longbows, and maybe you'll decide to shoot first before hand-to-hand combat. Is that correct? I'm
Yeah. That's
understanding it.
that's that's absolutely it, and that kind of describes the pattern of many Ruckus games, where you try and get your archers into a position where they can shoot. Usually, you have to take an objective of some kind. There's always going to be an objective for the scenario. There's always something you have to do to win the scenario. And so if it's an objective, you usually get your archers into a position where you can cover that objective and then send your melee
Yeah,
men fighters in. And yes, I think that works well. But you have to have limits as well, because a game without limits is no fun, right? So the
yeah,
limits here are the command factors. So each hero has a command factor, and it's twice. So the other thing they have is I haven't spoken about it yet, is an attribute called prowess. And prowess is a kind of hero rating, really. It rates their ability as a leader, and it rates their ability to perform heroically. And so, the hero point of view, it decides their command factor. So, a hero's command factor is always twice its prowess. And for a captain, that's 3. So his command factor is 6. That means he can command up to 6 retainers, up to 6 inches away. So one problem can be that you advance with your fighters and leave your archers behind, and the next thing you know, they're out of command. So it's got to be quite you've got to really think about how you're going to move your characters on the table so you don't end out of command. At the end of the turn, any character that's not in command becomes feckless. And a feckless character has a d6 rolled for it to see what they do. So their behavior is random. If you roll a 6 or a 5 and a 6, then that character will try to get back into command range. If you roll a 1 or a 2, they've got home. They're not there to enjoy themselves. They don't really want to be there. I can't imagine any medieval fighter really wanted to be in the action. And so, given the opportunity, they're going to slow down. And if they get a 3 and a 4, you just stand around counting their feet for the turn and don't do anything. And so that's called feckless. And then we have various versions of feckless. There's even a cow feckless for cows in a herd. If they get a certain random event, they become cow feckless. And there's a different one for mounted warriors. Mounted combat is new to Ruckus. That's just happening this month. September's issue of Wargames Illustrated has the rules for mounted combat, because up till now, being set in the Wars of the Roses, it's been okay for them all to be on foot. But we now have the mounted rules. And that brings a completely different aspect to the game, because everybody's suddenly moving that much further. Ruckus is played usually on a 4x4 or 3x3 table, and mounted characters could get across that pretty quickly. And so I limit mounted characters to a certain extent. If they want to charge into melee, that becomes a gambit, like we discussed before. They have to roll, and if they roll a 1, it's not going to happen. Something's gone wrong. The foot slipped out of the stirrup, or the rein snapped, something like that, and it takes him a turn to get his horse back under control. If he rolls a second dice for a calamity, and if he rolls higher than the current turn number, then that is a calamity, and something's happened to the horse. Either the horse is blown and it can't do anything else, or its foot has gone in a hole and it's damaged his leg and it can't do anything. So the horse is out of the game and the rider is dismounted. So that brings a whole new aspect. I mean, the charging knight, as we know, was probably the ultimate force on any battlefield. When you look at impetus in melee, a huge great lance with maybe half a ton of armor, knight and horse behind it is a pretty compelling argument in any fight, isn't it? And so we've managed to capture that. There's quite a few melee advantages to charging in on a horse, but horses are quite vulnerable. And once they start getting hit by arrows, they start bolting and scattering around the place and scampering about. So your force can become quite dispersed. So I think we've captured every element really of medieval skirmish in a fairly simple system that's easy to learn, it's fun to play, and it is a bit addictive because you do want to develop your players. And I've had some great feedback, from people who really enjoy it. Somebody said, "I've never laughed so much playing a war game." One
That's
man
right.
said, "I'd like to give you feedback, but my sides are hurting too much from laughing." And the descriptions, some of the descriptions we've had, some of the feedback, compare the game well with other skirmish games that are out there. And they describe it as having an elegant simplicity, as an excellent game. I've had quite a lot of really good positive feedback and very little negative criticisms, really. So I believe it's a good game. It took me a long time to believe that my game was any good. I played it with friends for a while, and I couldn't really convince myself. I wasn't sure if it was a good game or not, really. And then I went to a club one day, and there were a group of people sitting around a table playing a game, and they were having a great time. They were laughing and patting each other's backs and having fun. And I walked over and they were playing my game. And that's when I began to realise that we actually had a good game. So yeah.
Yeah, it's moving and it's taking off. Now, where we can find Ruckus, where people can find it, all these new supplements that are coming just before we close this discussion,
Yeah.
so we can give information to everybody who will watch this video.
So the place to go to find Ruckus is the Wargames Illustrated website. And if you go on there, there's a section called Games, and if you click on there, you'll find on there an awful lot of additions to Ruckus. So all the supplements are published on there. You'll find the campaign rules on there, the mounted combat rules, all the additional diverse alarms, several new scenarios, and Wargames Illustrated have been fantastic in supporting my game. They've got plans to keep supporting it. So there are always going to be new retinues. There are always going to be new scenarios. And we're just approaching 1,000 members in our Facebook group. And when we get to 1,000 members, there's going to be a giveaway. We're going to do a free giveaway.
Fantastic.
I think we've got 14 people to sign up to get to 1,000. And when that happens, there's going to be a nice surprise for everybody. And I don't know myself yet what we're going to give away, but it's going to be substantial. It's going to be a substantial part to the game.
That's nice. Well, we're going to have all the links in the video description anyway, so people can follow. Um, I think I've read the rules and I'm going to do a review. I think it's a great game, very innovative, solo friendly. If I could uh, final conclusion. And it's very important that you have included many special rules for different medieval periods. So many people can play that don't play necessarily 100 Years' War or Wars of the Rose that can use in many different, let's say, theaters of war. Something that you want to add at the end that I missed, or something you want to say before we close?
Um, well, I would say that absolutely you're right when you say that you can use it for any eras. Um, the plan is to expand forwards. The Reavers have taken us into pike and shot period, so the next thing we'll be looking at is English civil ruckus and the 30 Years' War, and looking at more of those kind of more advanced shooting weapons. And of course, the game will change with that. And I would say, and it does say in the rules, that please use whatever figures you have. And I think the game lends itself to low-grade fantasy. I think it would lend itself to certainly to ancients and early medieval, your Dark Ages, Vikings and Saxons. And I don't think it'd be um, very difficult to use the existing rules for any of those things with just a few small changes. And eventually, I think Ruckus will become period agnostic and will cover all the periods to the modern era, really. So, yeah, enjoy
Well,
it.
that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So, Mike, thank you so much for joining me today. Really appreciate it. Guys, anything regarding the game will be in links below the video. And join the Facebook page because all the rules, explanations, you explain, you're very active there, and
Oh,
people
yes.
can talk to each other and discuss about the rules. Thank you so much for joining me. And
My pleasure.
waiting. I'm telling online. I'm waiting for a Ruckus game for my channel from you, so we can showcase it. That's okay.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. And I shall record a game and send it to you as soon as I possibly can.
That's perfect. Thank you guys for watching us. I hope you enjoyed this short video. Here's the Ruckus. Check the game; it's absolutely brilliant, and I will have reports um, regarding my experience of the game very soon next week. Thank you so much for watching, and bye bye.